Now, I'm trying to understand in the field now, when you go out to talk to the people, can you say anything about that, like the people you meant to talk with? Because okay, I interviewed a man who was in Port Harcourt at the time, who was in the fabrication. Basically they were there to fabricate the weapons, no? And of course, most of these instruments they are still available in Abia, no, in the War Museum there. Now, let's look at the women that you talked to who were maybe directly in the war or have been supportive in the war. I want to hear what the kind of interaction you had with them when you contacted them for this research.
The interaction, they were welcoming. They were willing to tell their stories. You know, sometimes the things you pass through, you kind of get a better perspective to it when you have the privilege of sharing it with another person. These women actually didn't think they did anything unique. To them, they were simply surviving the war. They were adjusting to the circumstances of the time. They knew that their sisters and their brothers were in the East fighting. They knew. One of the things that came out clearly in the communication is that unity of the Igbo. They saw themselves as one. They were one family, one broad Igbo family. What was happening to A was happening to B. So for them, they were kind of trying to help their brothers, help their sisters to survive. They didn't even think they did anything unique. It's those of us who had the privilege of studying their accounts, examining the issues that can say, wow, these people did something tremendous here. But they looked at themselves as just ordinary people, ordinary women, trying to cope with the times, trying to make ends meet for themselves, but at the same time also trying to help somebody else to survive. So that's it. Some also were not very willing to tell their story. The Civil War wasn't a very pleasant experience, not for anybody. No matter where you were or where you stand in the scheme of things, it wasn't just a pleasant war at all. So there were those who would want to forget what happened, but not many of them actually. Just few people that wouldn't want to talk. Others were willing to really say what they remembered of the war, what they did during the war, how they navigated the problems, how they outsmarted the soldiers, and so on and so forth. Some had interesting laughs, at some of their escapades. But it's interesting. It also tells how courageous these women were, very courageous. When somebody will package her market goods in a coffin and give the impression that they're going to bury somebody, but actually carrying the coffin across the border to help people at the other end. I mean, very interesting, but very amusing.
You see, this is the human story. And it is good to tell this story. It is very, very important, no? Because this is who we are. We are people. We are not perfect. Sometimes we fight, sometimes we live, sometimes we die. But we will be doing a disservice to our generation, those that will come after us, if we do not tell this story. So we go back to the conversation again that it is absolutely important that we tell our story. You see, I was interviewing a lecturer in Tennessee University. Then, of course, the conversation was about the role of women in Guinea-Bissau, because just like there and in many other parts in Africa, of course, in a global situation, the side of the women in the war is not often recounted. No, you can talk even of the world war, the European Civil War, we want to call it like that. Okay, call it World War. That's how the European would prefer it. No, with everything that happened to them, they happened to also to other people. So, in the Nigerian Civil War too, women have been there. They have been there. So when we are saying the role of women in the war, it's not like we are trying to do them a favor. Because now, think about it. You have a husband, you have a son. Maybe you only have these two. Now, the enemy came and he killed both of them. It is natural that you take a gun and fight. It is just natural. It's a normal, that is the normal way of human being behave. You cannot be begging. You have nothing anymore. You want to kill me, kill me. You already killed my son and killed my husband. So what is there to live for? So saying that the women were also there, not just carrying goods to, or maybe carrying food to other men, that they were actually there fighting, is a natural thing. But we hardly hear it told. Now, the question I'm trying to pose to you is, how can more version of the women's story be told also in our day-to-day life? Because it is not a favor to them. They have been there. How can we hear more of this story?
Yeah, it's we have a world that thinks that what women do don't matter, but they matter a lot, just like you have said. What we need to do is to create this sensitivity that their story is as important as the story of the man. Earlier you defined history as his and story. There's also a version that says her story. So when you have the his or her, you have the story at the other end. When you come to history, we have major blocks. We have the political history, we have the social history, we have the economic history. These are the major blocks. But there are so many subdivisions of history under these blocks with different names. Women can be studied under political history or even economic history. It only takes that sensitivity in the person doing the study to bring in their story. When I was a student of history in the 80s, not much was done about bringing in the female voice. So we often didn't hear the female voice. We only heard about what the men did. I would say that was even what prompted me to actually tell the story of those whose voices we have not heard. When I did my master's, I still followed on what the men did. But thank God, coming to do my PhD, I had a rethink. And I decided to look for a voice, a group whose voice have not been heard. And I settled on the voice of women to tell their story. So it is just that sensitivity. Over time, within, I would say, 5 years of teaching in the University of Nigeria, I developed a course, African Women in History. That course was to sensitize students to women, their own role in history, to make them kind of aware that history has another angle that we often do not incorporate in the major narrative, what we rarely hear about them. So we now started looking at women, African women, anywhere from north, south, east, and west. What are their stories like? What are they doing? What have they done? So as we sensitize students to these varieties of voices, they become aware that history is not just about what the men have done. It is also what the women have done, what the young woman has done, what the older woman has done, what the young female child has done. They all make up that story. Our story is not complete when all these voices are not represented.
That is the only way the story can be complete, because like I also told that lecturer, which of course, it is just the reality. The men and the women are the co-creator of their society. It is not just the men, it is not just the women. And this nature has set the rule very clear. If we leave only the men in this world, humanity will perish. And if we leave only the women to humanity will perish. So
Sure.
it's not just that we only tell one side of the story when we know that we both depend on each other for us to exist. So I think if anything we can do to promote more of that second version that make the story complete, then it have to be done. All right, I want to thank you so much, Professor Chedu. Yeah, really be very interested in conversation. Now, to conclude this conversation this morning, what would be your final statement? Whether in terms of the importance of storytelling, looking at Nigeria, or maybe a particular thing you wanted to say I didn't make mention of, please go ahead and conclude it in your own way.
Okay, what will be my final statement or comment is this. It's part of our earlier discussion on history, removing history from the curriculum and getting history back to the curriculum. Knowledge production in Nigeria stands on its own. It is looked at as something independent of policy. We don't have a government that looks at what is going on in the research centers of our universities to kind of bring in one thing or the other to help in the running of the country. A lot of researches have been done, a lot has been said, a lot are buried in books. In other places, including where you are, government looks at what happens in the universities, knowledge that is produced in the university, and makes use of this knowledge for bettering the welfare of the society. Our government should migrate to this very level. In Nigeria, we should begin to take our universities more seriously. We should begin to look at our universities as partners in government, partners in governance. We should begin to look at the knowledges being produced, synthesize them. How can we internalize this? How can we apply this? We must stop the policy or the attitude of pushing away information, knowledge. No, we do that a lot in the country and it has not helped us. And one adverse effect is lack of continuity in our policies, in what we do. So we should pay attention to knowledge that is being produced in the universities, in our research centers, in our research institutes, and utilize them in policies that we make for the welfare of the country. That's what I would say. I mean, that's the last thing I will chip in our conversation.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the contribution to today's conversation. And I believe that the audience that are listening to us, they have a lot of value from it because history, everything, history for us is everything. If you don't know where you are coming from, you don't know where you are going to. So we must do everything we can to make sure that our version of reality is told. And we are the only one that will tell this story. Nobody's going to do it for us. Because as we can see, because we have not think that it was important, I that grew up in the state have to learn about my state from outside. This is not good. That is giving too much away. Allowing somebody to tell your story for you is too much of a price to pay. So thank you very much.
Thank you.